The lantern swung wildly in Isabel Ortega's trembling hand, throwing ragged shadows across the narrow hallway as she pushed open the door to her sister's room. The storm outside hadn't broken yet, but the wind clawed at the clay walls like something desperate to get in. Isabel's breath came fast and shallow, her heart pounding hard enough to choke her. Something was wrong. She felt it in her bones before she even saw the open trunk. Luce was packing. Not just clothes, everything. Her wedding dress still hung from the wooden frame near the window, white lace fluttering in the draft, like a ghost too restless to settle. Luce Isabel's voice cracked. "What are you doing?" Luce Ortega froze halfway through stuffing a bundle of silk scarves into a worn carpet bag. Her dark hair tumbled over her shoulders, and the moonlight through the window made her look unreal, beautiful, dangerous, untouchable. She turned lips curling into an impatient sneer. "What does it look like I'm doing?" "I'm leaving." Isabel felt her throat close. "But the wedding?" "Luce, it's tomorrow, in the morning. Everyone in Santa Roja is—" "Let them wait," Luce snapped the bag shut. "I'm not marrying a half-breed rancher just because our father wants more land." Isabel flinched. "Sam Blackhorse isn't—" "He's not, oh please." Luce rolled her eyes so hard her whole body seemed to sway with it. "You think I care about whatever noble brooding you read on that man's face the one time you passed him on the street? I'm not marrying him. Raphael is waiting for me outside." "Raphael," Isabel whispered. "Luce, he's a drifter. You barely know him." Luce laughed, a sharp metallic sound that made the lantern flame tremble. "I know enough. And he wants me. That's what matters." She hoisted the carpet bag over her shoulder and stepped forward. Isabel blocked the doorway with her body, hands shaking but firm. "You can't do this. If you walk out now, Papa will lose everything. The land deal, the cattle, everything the Blackhorse family offered in exchange for the marriage." "Then marry him yourself," Luce said lightly. Isabel felt every muscle in her body go still. Luce leaned closer, her voice dropping into something soft and cruel. "No one ever chose you, Isabel." Why start now? The words sliced deeper than Isabel wanted to admit. Luce saw the wound land and smiled with satisfaction. Before Isabel could speak again, Luce shoved her aside. Isabel stumbled against the dresser, catching herself on the edge as the lantern swung dangerously in her grasp. Luce didn't look back. She slipped out the rear doorway into the dark, where the faint silhouette of a horse and rider waited. Rafael Vega tipped his hat at the house, mocking triumphant, then kicked his heels into the horse's side. Luce climbed up behind him, pressing herself to his back. The two of them disappeared into the night like foxes escaping the henhouse. Isabel didn't chase them. She couldn't. Her legs wouldn't move. She stood there in the empty room, staring at the half-open window where the thin desert wind fluttered the white wedding dress. It swayed gently, as if waving goodbye. Her father's voice thundered from the front room. "Isabel, what was that noise? Did she wake you?" Isabel wiped her eyes fast, forcing her voice steady. "Papa, Luce is gone." There was a beat of stunned silence. Then the storm truly broke. Only this one wasn't outside. By sunrise, Santa Roja already knew. The little adobe house shook under the weight of her father's rage. Isabel endured it silently, knowing there was no explanation he would accept. She hadn't slept, hadn't eaten. She couldn't even bring herself to look out the window where dust clouds rose in the distance, sign of travelers heading toward the church. People were expecting a bride who had galloped into the desert long before dawn. Her father grabbed her by the shoulders. You will go to the church, he hissed. You will tell them what happened, and you will do whatever Reverend Finch says must be done. Do you hear me, Isabel? Isabel nodded, though her voice wouldn't come. She dressed quietly, her fingers clumsy as she tied the faded blue sash around her waist. It wasn't a wedding dress, not even close, but she had no choice. When she stepped out into the morning light, the sky was pale gold, the kind that made the desert look endless. The town bell rang in the distance, summoning everyone to the ceremony that would no longer exist. Isabel walked. Each step felt heavier than the last. Her father walked a few paces behind her, his jaw set hard, his boots kicking up little flares of red dust. He didn't speak. Neither did she. The closer they grew to Santa Roja's white stone chapel, the clearer the sound of voices became. Dozens, maybe hundreds, everyone whispering, everyone waiting. Isabel swallowed hard. She wasn't ready. She'd never been ready for any of this. When they reached the doors of the church, her father suddenly stopped. You will do what must be done, he repeated. She nodded again, but the truth sat heavy in her chest. She didn't even know what that meant. The tall wooden doors loomed before her. She pushed them open slowly, feeling the weight of 100 eyes pin her where she stood. The church went silent. At the far end of the aisle, Sam Blackhorse stood beside Reverend Finch. His posture was rigid as stone, his expression unreadable, dark eyes tracking her every move. His black hair, tied loosely at the nape of his neck, brushed the collar of his ceremonial jacket. Behind him stood his father, Thomas Blackhorse, the most powerful man in the territory. The tension in the room thickened. Isabel could almost hear it breathe. Sam frowned. It wasn't anger. It was confusion. He didn't know. Not yet. Her knees shook. Her fingers dug into her skirt. She opened her mouth, but the church doors behind her slammed open with a crash that echoed through the rafters. The sheriff strode in, dust on his boots and a paper in his fist. He raised it high. Looks like your bride ran off, folks, gasps ripped across the church. Sam's face blanched. Thomas Blackhorse's jaw clenched hard enough to splinter bone, and Isabel stood in the center aisle, exposed, humiliated, and alone. Her nightmare had only begun. The church erupted like dry timber meeting flame. Whispers flew through the pews, cutting cruel, unstoppable. Someone laughed, sharp and nervous. A woman gasped. A child started crying. Isabel stood frozen in the center aisle, the sheriff's words still echoing in her skull. Looks like your bride ran off, folks. The paper in his hand. Luce's note fluttered like a death certificate. Sam Blackhorse turned slowly to face the sheriff, his expression unreadable. His jaw was tight, his fists clenched at his sides. The dark eyes that had locked on Isabel moments ago now burned with quiet fury. Behind him, Thomas Blackhorse took a single step forward. What the hell are you talking about? His voice cut through the church like a blade. The sheriff didn't flinch. She left before sunrise. Took off with some man on horseback. Name might be Rafael Vega, but hell if I care. She left this. He handed the note to Thomas, who snatched it with a sneer. His eyes scanned it once. His lips curled in disgust. She's disgraced us, he said flatly. This is a betrayal. Daniel Ortega, Isabel's father, appeared beside her in the aisle, breathless sweat beading at his brow. Thomas, he said quickly, I didn't know. I swear to you, if I had even guessed she would. You promised me a bride, Thomas snarled. We gave you land, water rights, cattle. And this, he waved the note like it might catch fire in his fingers, is what you offer in return. I have another daughter. Daniel's voice cracked. Isabel. She's here. She's... She can take Clara's place. A stunned silence rolled over the room. Isabel's knees nearly buckled. Thomas's cold gaze shifted to her. It moved slowly, deliberately from her trembling hands to the plain dress hanging heavy on her frame. His lip curled like he smelled something sour. "You expect my son to marry her?" he said, his voice thick with contempt. "Look at her." The words struck harder than Isabel expected. Some part of her still hoped for mercy. But there was no mercy in Thomas Blackhorse. She felt every eye in the room turn toward her. They stared openly now, no longer pretending. Pity, disgust, mockery, all of it wrapped around her like barbed wire. "She's still a daughter," Daniel insisted. "The contract said a daughter." "You can't say—" "The contract said," Clara Thomas interrupted. "Your prized jewel. This is bait and switch." Beside the altar, Reverend Finch opened his mouth, then closed it. His fingers gripped his Bible tighter. Sam hadn't moved. His silence was a boulder in the center of the storm. He hadn't looked at her again. He hadn't spoken. Isabel wanted to run. Her body screamed for it. She imagined bolting down the aisle, slamming the door behind her, disappearing into the desert, where no one could ever say her name like it was a stain. But her legs didn't move. And then he did. Sam took one step forward, then another. He walked down the steps of the altar until he stood beside her. Isabel didn't look up. The tension was unbearable. Then his voice came low, steady, final. "Then I'll marry her." Silence, absolute, like the air had been sucked from the church. Thomas's face went red. "You will not." "I will," Sam said again, louder now. He turned to face his father fully. "I'm 35 years old. I don't need your permission." "You damn well do if you want to keep your name, your land, your future." "I've already made my choice," Sam cut in. His voice wasn't loud, but it rang like a hammer on steel. Reverend Finch cleared his throat. "Then, let's proceed." Isabel's heart thudded like a war drum. She tried to speak to object, but nothing came. Reverend Finch opened his book with shaking hands. "Samuel Blackhorse, do you take this woman, Isabel Ortega, as your lawfully wedded wife?" "I do," Sam said without hesitation. "And Isabel?" Isabel blinked. Her throat was dry. She could barely hear over the blood in her ears. "Do I?" What was she agreeing to? Shame, a lifetime of being second best? Or was she somehow being rescued? She whispered. "No ring. No kiss." The Reverend pronounced them husband and wife in the dead silence of a church that had come to witness one wedding and received a scandal instead. As they turned to leave, Isabel felt her father's hand graze her arm. "You fixed this," he murmured. "Don't screw it up." She didn't reply. The church doors opened. The desert sun poured in like judgment. Sam didn't take her hand. They walked out side by side, strangers tied by a vow under the burning eyes of a town that would never forget. The ride to the ranch was long and silent. The wheels of the wagon creaked with every rut in the dirt road. The horse snorted and stomped, eager to get moving, unaware of the tension it carried behind it. Isabel sat stiffly, her hands clutched in her lap. She didn't know where to look. Sam held the reins loosely, his gaze locked straight ahead. He hadn't looked at her once since the church. She wanted to speak. She wanted to thank him, to ask why. But the silence between them was so thick it felt sacred, fragile. Like if she opened her mouth, the spell would break, and everything would collapse. So she said nothing. They arrived at dusk. The Black Horse Ranch was tucked into the bend of a shallow canyon, where the red rocks turned golden in the evening light. The house was modest but solid wood and adobe with a wide porch and horses grazing beyond the corral. Sam jumped down first, then reached for her bag. She followed him inside. The air smelled like dust and wood smoke. He set her bag near the stairs, then hesitated. "I'll show you your room." His voice startled her. She nodded silently and followed him up the stairs. He opened the door and stepped aside. Isabel froze. The room had been decorated. Flowers, fresh desert blooms, sat in a vase on the dresser. Candles unlit waited on the nightstand. The bed had a beautiful quilt spread across it, clearly. Knew its colors deep red and turquoise. It was a room meant for a wedding night. Meant for someone else. Sam stiffened. I forgot they did this," he said almost to himself. "Mrs. Patterson, my neighbor, she must have come yesterday to prepare." He stepped inside, quickly grabbed the flowers. Water sloshed from the vase. He dumped it in the wash basin and started pulling ribbons from the curtains. "This wasn't for you," he said. "I mean, it wasn't supposed to be God." "Sam, I'll take it down." "You don't have to." "Yes, I do." He yanked the quilt from the bed, revealing plain sheets beneath. "You shouldn't have to see this. I'm making it worse." She reached for the door frame to steady herself. "Sam." He stopped still, holding the quilt. "Just stop, please." He looked at her, really looked, and nodded once. "I'll sleep downstairs," he said. "You don't have to. I want to." He turned, stopped halfway through the doorway. "I'm not going to touch you. I just want you to know that." She swallowed. "I'm not afraid of you." "Good." He left. Isabel stood alone in the room meant for someone else, breathing the scent of flowers, picked for a bride who never came. And for the first time all day, she let herself cry. The bed was too soft, too quiet, too wrong. Isabel lay stiffly beneath the plain white sheet, eyes open in the dark, her body folded on one side like she was trying to disappear into the mattress. Every now and then, the floor creaked below Sam, turning over on the old sofa, or maybe just shifting in discomfort, same as her. The flowers were gone. The quilt, too. But she could still smell the sweetness of it in the air, something light floral, like jasmine and sage. Meant for Luce. Chosen for Luce. This room had been decorated with love for a woman who'd ridden away without looking back. Isabel had cried quietly when Sam left, but now even the tears had dried out. Her head throbbed dully. Her eyes burned. Her chest felt like it had caved in and left nothing but silence behind. She turned over and stared at the open window, letting the breeze wash over her. Somewhere out in the distance, coyotes howled. Then a second sound, faint, almost hidden beneath the wind. Footsteps. Heavy. Slow. Below her. Sam. She held her breath. She could hear him moving across the floor downstairs. A pause. A creak. Then nothing. She pictured him sitting there in the dark alone, like her, maybe regretting everything. Maybe not. Maybe he didn't care at all. Maybe marrying her had been a moment of pride, defiance, something meant for his father, not for her. Not because he saw her. Not because he wanted her. That thought sat on her chest like a stone. She turned back toward the wall, curled into herself, and closed her eyes. Sleep never came. By morning, Sam was already gone. Isabel found a note in his handwriting on the table. It was brief. Out with the herd. Won't be back till late. Coffee's on the stove. She stared at the words for a long time. His penmanship was neat but sharp, like every letter had been cut with a blade. It told her nothing, no warmth, no coldness, just fact. She poured the coffee. It was bitter and half-burned, but she drank it anyway. The house was clean but unfamiliar, too big in some ways, too tight in others. The quiet made everything louder, her footsteps, the scrape of her chair, the rush of water from the pump. She cooked breakfast, ate a little, washed the dishes, then sat with her hands folded in her lap, staring at nothing. By noon, she couldn't take it anymore. She needed to move. She scrubbed the kitchen floor, then the windows, then dusted shelves no one had touched in months. When she opened the small study off the parlor, she paused. A heavy wooden desk dominated the room. Papers sat in loose stacks, half-tidied, some yellowed at the edges. A ledger book lay open, ink smudged across the page. Beside it, a tin of receipts and another of IOUs. She shouldn't, but her fingers moved anyway. She sat at the desk and began sorting. Time passed faster than she expected. Her hands remembered the work like muscle memory, the years spent keeping her father's books, managing supplies, stretching food through lean months. By the time the sun dipped low, she'd organized most of it. The ranch wasn't just messy, it was bleeding, overcharged on feed, cattle undervalued, buyers behind. Unsaw payment. Her brow furrowed. Sam had either been cheated or too tired to care. When the door creaked open, she jumped. Sam stepped inside, covered in dust and sweat. His hat hung low, shoulders sagging. He looked like he'd been riding for days. Their eyes met across the room. He frowned. "What are you doing in there?" She swallowed. I was cleaning. I found the ledger. I didn't mean to pry, but didn't ask you to fix anything," he said, brushing past her toward the wash basin. Isabel's stomach dropped. She'd overstepped. Of course she had. He probably thought she was trying to take control. "I'm sorry," she said quickly. "I'll leave it alone." Sam paused halfway through scrubbing his hands. He glanced at the desk. At the stack of invoices, she'd sorted the neat notes in the margins in careful feminine handwriting. He picked up the ledger, flipped through it. Then he looked at her, really looked. "You did all this?" She nodded. "This afternoon." His brow furrowed deeper, but not with anger. With something like surprise. "You caught the overcharge on the feed." "Yes. And the buyer for your yearling still owes you $200. He looked at the page again. "How'd you even? I kept my father's books for years," she said. "After Mama passed, he never touched them again." Sam stood there for a moment, ledger still open in his hands. The silence stretched. Then quiet but certain, he said, "You saved my damn ranch, Isabel." Her breath caught. He didn't say it kindly, but he didn't say it cruelly either. Just truth. Plain, hard truth. Isabel didn't know what to say, so she said nothing. She moved toward the kitchen. "Supper's ready," she murmured. They ate in silence, but it was different this time. Not hostile, not heavy, just quiet. Afterward, Sam didn't go straight to bed. He lingered while she washed the dishes, leaning against the doorway, arms crossed. Watching her. Not staring, not judging, just seeing her. When she turned to dry her hands, he spoke. "You think you could keep looking at the books?" She blinked. "If you want me to, I do." A pause. "You're good at it." She nodded once, heart thudding. Sam pushed off the wall. "I'll be up early again." She opened her mouth to say goodnight, but he was already turning away. At the base of the stairs, he stopped. Then, without looking back, he said, "Thank you, Isabel." The words were simple, ungraceful, but they landed like rain on dry ground. That night she lay in the same bed, but the room felt a little less haunted. By the end of the week, a rhythm had formed. Sam left before sunrise. Isabel handled the house, the books, the small things he didn't know how to touch. He started asking her opinions, letting her order supplies, discussing payments at dinner. He was still quiet, distant. But something had cracked open between them. Not love, not yet. But something. The morning she made bread, everything changed again. She stood at the counter, forearms dusted with flour, kneading rhythmically. Her hair was tied back, sleeves rolled up. She hadn't heard the door open. Then, "Smells good." His voice came from right behind her. She froze. His chest was almost touching her back. She could feel the heat of him, the roughness of his breath. Sam reached up for the coffee pot above her head. His arm brushed her shoulder. He paused inches from her. 3 heartbeats passed. Neither moved. The air between them thickened. Then she said, voice low but steady, "Don't step closer unless you mean it." Silence. Then Sam backed away quickly, coffee pot in hand. "Sorry," he muttered. His ears were red. He poured a cup and left the room. Isabel stood alone, heart pounding, the taste of something new. Something terrifying rising in her throat. The heat hit early that morning, dry and biting, with the kind of wind that lifted red dust into the air and stung your skin like sandpaper. Isabel stepped onto the porch just after sunrise, apron tied, tight hair pinned up messily. She had barely slept, not from discomfort, from memory. The kitchen, the closeness, the way Sam's breath had grazed her neck before he backed away like he'd touched something forbidden. "Don't step closer unless you mean it," she had whispered. And he hadn't. Not really. He left before dawn again, without a word. The coffee was still hot on the stove, but Isabel didn't drink it. Her hands were restless, her chest too full. She needed to move, to breathe, to be anywhere but inside that house where every corner now held a silence too loud to bear. The garden out back was overgrown, half wild from neglect. Rows of beans, tomatoes, and squash drooped from lack of water. Weeds thrived where good things used to grow. She pulled her sleeves up and set to work. By mid-morning, her arms ached, her dress was streaked with dust and sweat, and her cheeks burned. But the chaos in her mind had settled into rhythm, weeding, watering, replanting, fixing what had been ignored too long. She didn't hear the footsteps until they were right behind her. "You're doing that all wrong," a voice said, soft and lilting with the lilt of the Pueblo people in its vowels. Isabel turned, squinting into the sun. A woman stood just outside the garden gate, wide-brimmed straw hat shading her dark face. She wore a faded blue skirt and boots thick with trail dust, a woven basket over one arm. She looked maybe 30, maybe 40. Hard to say with those sharp eyes. "I'm sorry," Isabel said, brushing her hands on her apron. The woman stepped closer, reached down and plucked a wilted tomato vine from the dirt. "You're flooding the roots. They'll rot by morning. These need mist, gentle, like desert rain." Isabel blinked, unsure whether to be embarrassed or thankful. "I didn't know anyone else lived nearby." The woman grinned. "I live farther out near the arroyo. Maria Tenorio. I bring eggs to town, trade threads, sometimes keep the preacher's garden from dying." She extended her hand. Isabel took it. Isabel Blackhorse, she said before she could think better of it. Maria raised a brow. So it's true then? Isabel's stomach dipped. You've heard. Whole town's heard. Maria crouched, touching a sprouting squash leaf with care. You're the bride who stayed. I wasn't meant to be, Isabel said quietly. Maria glanced up at her. Maybe, or maybe you're the one who didn't run. That silence again, heavy, tight. Isabel stood there, unsure what to say. Then Maria straightened and brushed the dust from her skirt. You walk around like a ghost in a house that wants to love you, she said. That man of yours is half stone, half storm, but he's not cruel, and he's not blind. You give him something real long enough, he might just start looking. I don't know how to give him anything he wants. Don't give him what he wants, Maria said, matter of fact. Give him what you are. With that, she handed Isabel a small cloth bundle from her basket. Dried chile. For your beans. You cook with flavor, he'll remember you before he even gets off the horse. Then she tipped her hat and walked off, boots kicking up dust as she went. That night, Isabel cooked stew with the chile Maria gave her. The scent filled the kitchen, warm, smoky, alive. Sam came in late as usual. He paused in the doorway. Smells different. New recipe, she said, keeping her tone neutral. They ate at the table. It was quiet, but he asked for seconds. When she passed the bowl, their fingers touched. Neither pulled away too fast. After supper, he lingered in the kitchen again. She wiped down the table. He leaned against the wall. You always cook like this, she shrugged. Only when I want someone to feel at home. He looked at her a long time. Then, as if to himself, he murmured, You've changed this place. Isabel didn't know what to say, so she just nodded. Later, as she climbed the stairs, she found a folded blanket and pillow sitting outside her door. Not a hint, not a rejection, just consideration that somehow hurt more than silence. The next morning, she woke early again. No note this time. She walked to the corral just as the sun was cresting the horizon. The horses stirred hooves crunching dry earth. Sam was already saddling one, his hands moving with practiced ease. You're up early, he said, not turning. I wanted to ask you something. He glanced over. She hesitated. Do you want me here? He blinked. Once, then looked away. You don't ask that unless you're planning to leave. I'm not. He cinched the saddle. Tight. Too tight. Then said without looking at her, I didn't want a wife like this. Not forced. Not traded like cattle. She nodded slowly. I didn't want to be a wife like this. They stood there, wind blowing between them. Then Sam said quietly, But you keep showing up. You keep trying. So do you. He turned, met her eyes, held them. I don't know what this is yet, he said. But I don't hate it. It wasn't love, but it wasn't nothing. That evening after dinner, Isabel sat in the study, finishing the last column of numbers. She marked a total, closed the ledger, and set it neatly on the desk. Sam walked in and leaned on the doorframe. Isabel. She looked up. He scratched the back of his neck, awkward. You saved me from a bad deal on the hay order, and the cattle feed's been showing up on time since you sent that letter to Gutierrez. I know, she said softly. I mean, thank you. She stood. Sam stepped into the room. I'm not good at saying things. Not like my father. He's got words for every occasion. I don't want speeches, she said. I want honesty. He looked down. Then here it is, I don't know what happens next. But I'd rather face it with you than alone. That landed in her chest like truth. She nodded. Outside, the wind shifted. A stillness settled over the ranch, quiet and fragile. Neither of them saw the dust trail rising in the distance. A wagon, a visitor, one that would shatter the calm before it ever had a chance to take root. The wagon came just before noon, its wheels creaking under the weight of something heavier than cargo, expectation, history, ruin. Isabel stood on the porch, wiping her hands on her apron, half blinded by the sun. At first, all she saw was dust rising from the road, then shapes, one man driving a woman seated beside him, a hat with a wide brim, a flash of gold earrings, a laugh that didn't belong in this quiet place. Her heart stopped. It was loose. Hair glinting like copper in the light face tilted upward, like the world owed her something, like she'd never run from anything, never left destruction in her wake. Beside her, a man. Not Raphael. Someone older, well-dressed with a waxed mustache and the kind of smile that never quite reached his eyes. The wagon rolled to a stop in front of the porch. Luce climbed down with practiced grace, her boots not even scuffing the step. "Isabel, darling," she sang. "Surprise." Isabel didn't move. The man behind Luce tipped his hat. "Miguel Calderon," he said, with the kind of voice that oiled its way into conversations. "Pleasure to meet the good sister." Isabel glanced between them. "What are you doing here?" Luce laughed again. "Why, visiting, of course. We were passing through on our way to Santa Fe. Miguel has business, and I thought, how could I not stop and see how my little sister is managing married life?" She said it with sugar on her tongue and poison in her eyes. Before Isabel could respond, the screen door creaked behind her. Sam. He stepped onto the porch, shoulders squared, sweat darkening the collar of his shirt. His face was unreadable, but Isabel saw the flicker in his eyes the moment he registered who stood before him. Luce's smile widened. "Samuel, you're looking well." Sam didn't answer. "This is Miguel," Luce said, gesturing elegantly. "My husband." The word hung there like a blade. Isabel clenched the wood of the porch rail. Sam gave a short nod. "You're trespassing." Miguel raised his hands with a grin. "No harm intended, senor. We won't stay long." Luce swept her eyes over the porch, the garden, the curtains in the windows. "How cozy," she said sweetly. "Smaller than I imagined. But I suppose it suits you." Her gaze slid to Isabel. "Well, suits her." Sam's jaw tightened. Isabel kept her voice steady. "You should go. Nonsense. I want to see the house." Luce took a step toward the door, her skirts brushing against Isabel's leg. "Come on, sister. Show me how domestic you've become." Before Isabel could block her, Luce pushed inside. Miguel stayed outside, glancing at the land with casual interest. Sam looked at Isabel. "You don't have to, I know," she said softly. But she followed Luce inside anyway. The house suddenly felt smaller, every flaw visible. The worn chair in the corner. The water stain near the fireplace. The curtain that didn't quite match the rug. Luce's gaze swept it all with the precision of someone cataloging failure. "It's humble," she said at last. "But I suppose it works for you. No expectations, no pressure, no mirrors." Isabel crossed her arms. "What do you want?" I wanted to see for myself. Luce ran a finger along the mantel. "Everyone in town talks. Isabel Ortega married to Samuel Blackhorse, the bride who stood in the ashes. I had to know if it was true. It is. Luce's eyes gleamed. And is it real? Isabel stared at her. You left him. You left all of us. Luce turned toward her. And look what I gave you. A husband. A home. A name. You should be thanking me. Isabel's breath hitched. Luce stepped closer. Look at you playing wife in a house that was never meant to be yours. Isabel didn't back away. You didn't give me anything. You abandoned something you didn't have the courage to face. That's not a gift, Luce. That's a curse I had to clean up. Luce's lips curled. Still so self-righteous. Always pretending like you're better just because you suffer quieter. I don't pretend, Isabel said. I just endure. The front door opened again. Sam entered, arms crossed. Visit's over. Luce turned, all smiles again. Of course. Wouldn't want to overstay. Miguel. Her husband stepped inside, nodded politely. Thank you for your hospitality. Luce moved toward the door, but paused at the threshold. She looked at Isabel, then at Sam. I do hope you're happy, she said, sweet as syrup, though I imagine it's hard to be, when every night you wonder if she's thinking about me. Isabel didn't flinch. Sam spoke. You're not the one who stayed. Luce blinked. Just once. Then turned and swept out the door like a woman who still believed she had the last word. When the dust settled behind the wagon, Isabel sat down at the kitchen table. Her hands shook, not from fear, from rage. Sam stood in the doorway for a long moment. Then he said quietly, She's wrong. Isabel stared at the table. Is she? You're not second best. She looked up, eyes tired. You didn't choose me, Sam. Not really. You chose not to be humiliated. You chose not to let your father win. Sam didn't deny it. You married me because it was better than losing your pride, Isabel said. Not because you wanted me. I didn't know you yet, he said, and now Sam stepped closer, then stopped. Now I'm trying to figure out how to say what I should have said weeks ago. Then say it. I don't know how. Isabel stood, her voice low. Then don't expect me to keep pretending I'm something more than a shadow of the woman you were supposed to love. She walked past him, climbed the stairs without another word. Sam stood alone in the kitchen, the scent of her stew still lingering in the air, and realized he had just let something break that he wasn't sure he could fix. That night, Isabel lay awake in the dark, staring at the ceiling. On the floor below, Sam didn't sleep either. They were two people in one house, divided by silence, by pride, by the ghost of a woman who never wanted to stay. And neither of them knew if there was a way back. The days after Luce's visit dragged like molasses in winter, slow, heavy, and full of things left unsaid. Isabel moved through the house like a shadow. She cooked. She cleaned. She kept the books. But the light that had begun to flicker inside her, the tentative warmth, had been snuffed out the moment Luce walked back into her life and reminded her what she'd never been chosen. She spoke to Sam only when necessary. Short answers. No eye contact. No questions. Sam noticed. He tried. God, he tried. He left her fresh coffee in the mornings. He offered to bring supplies from town. He even fixed the creaking back step she'd tripped over twice last week. But the space between them had grown thick again, like fog rolling in over the canyon, unspoken guilt, unspoken hurt, and the echo of a sister's cruelty that neither of them knew how to erase. On the fourth day, as Isabel stood in the kitchen kneading bread dough, she heard his boots scuff against the doorway. "You need anything from Santa Roja?" he asked. His voice was soft. "Careful." She didn't look up. "No." A pause. "I was thinking we could ride in together next week. Maybe pick out a few new hens for the coop." Isabel's hands stilled in the dough. "I'll be here." Sam sighed low and tired. "Isabel." "I'm fine," she said too quickly. "You're not." She turned to him. Her face was calm, but her eyes gave her away. "You married me to defy your father, Sam. You didn't want me. That truth's been following us since the church steps, and I let myself forget it for a while. But Luce," she reminded me. "I told you." "You told me I wasn't second best," she interrupted. "But what am I if not a substitute, a solution to a broken deal?" Sam looked like he wanted to argue, but he didn't. He just looked at her like he was trying to see something that kept slipping out of focus. She turned back to the dough. "You don't have to fix this. I know how to survive. I've been doing it my whole life." And that was that. He left without another word. That night, Isabel lay awake again. The silence from downstairs stretched thin and brittle, and she knew Sam wasn't sleeping either. She almost got up, almost walked down those stairs, almost said anything, but almost doesn't mean a damn thing. 2 days later, the riders came. 3 horses, dust clouds, the sound of hooves striking dry earth like warning drums. Isabel stood at the window drying her hands on a towel and felt her stomach twist. Sam was in the barn. She dropped the towel, ran out the door. Sam. He stepped out just as the horses came into view. At the front rode Thomas Blackhorse. Behind him, a man in a pressed coat with a leather case strapped to his saddle, and another in dark robes, Judge Morrison. Sam's mouth tightened. "Stay inside." "Sam." "I said go." She froze, then nodded, watched from behind the curtains, watched her husband walk into a war she didn't start, but might be the cost of. Thomas dismounted first, as if the ranch still belonged to him. "Jacob," he said flatly. Thomas Sam returned. "You knew this was coming. I figured." Thomas gestured to the suited man. "Mr. Blackwell, my attorney. And Judge Morrison." Sam didn't blink. "You bringing a firing squad next?" Thomas ignored the jab. He pulled papers from his coat and handed them over. "This is a motion to annul your marriage, effective immediately, filed under breach of contract." Sam didn't take them. "What contract?" "When I gave you this land, Thomas said we agreed you would marry to strengthen the family. Clara Miller was that arrangement. Isabel Ortega is not." Sam crossed his arms. "I'm 35. I've worked this land since I was 16. And until you're 40, I still hold legal claim to half of it," Thomas snapped. "You marry wrong, I take it back." The judge cleared his throat. "This is legal, son. Your father's claim is binding, unless he relinquishes it." Thomas smiled coldly. "Which I won't." Mr. Blackwell stepped forward. "We propose a clean correction. The marriage is annulled. The property remains untouched. And in exchange..." A fourth rider approached. A woman elegant and composed, blonde, slim, with gloves stitched in ivory thread and a quiet pride in her eyes. Thomas gestured. "This is Margaret Morrison, Judge Morrison's daughter. Educated. Proper. The kind of woman who belongs on a ranch like this." Sam didn't move. "You think I'll trade one woman for another like cattle? You think I'll let you sink this family over a mistake? Thomas stepped in close. You choose this girl, this substitute, and you lose everything. Isabel heard every word through the window. Her knees buckled. She backed away from the curtain and ran up the stairs, grabbed the carpet bag from the closet, the same one Luce had packed. She couldn't stay. She wouldn't be the reason Sam lost his ranch, his birthright, his future. She shoved her few dresses inside, her mother's old Bible, the handkerchief Sam had left on the table the night after their wedding. Downstairs, the conversation turned to shouting. She was halfway down the stairs when the front door swung open. Sam stood in the entryway, alone, face unreadable. Where are you going? I heard everything she said. Her voice trembled, but she kept her chin up. I won't let you lose your ranch because of me. You think I care more about land than you. You should, she said. It's yours. This mistake doesn't have to cost you your life. Sam stepped forward. Don't call it that. She shook her head. You didn't choose me, Sam. Not really. He reached for her arm, not to stop her, just to make her look at him. And when she finally did, his voice broke open. I didn't choose you to make a point. I choose you because I can't breathe without you. The silence that followed wasn't heavy. It was holy. She blinked. What I didn't know it back then. At the altar, I was angry. I was proud. But when I saw you standing there so still, so terrified, and doing it anyway, I saw me. Her eyes filled. And every day since Sam went on Voice Rough, you've been showing up. You made this house a home. You fixed my books. You kept me from going under, and I didn't even realize it was happening. I thought I married someone by accident. He stepped closer. But I married the best thing that ever happened to me. Oh. She shook her head, lips trembling. Sam, I won't let him take that. I won't let you go. Her breath caught in her chest. He reached out. Please stay. Isabel stood there, carpet bag in her hand, and for the first time in weeks, she didn't feel like a burden. She felt like a choice, a real one. Okay, she whispered. Sam pulled her into his arms. Outside, the judge was still waiting, but inside the house, they'd already made their decision. The church hall in Santa Roja had never been this full. Every bench, every wall space, every inch of floor was packed with people, ranchers in sun-stained hats, merchants with clipboards tucked under their arms, housewives whispering behind fans, and a handful of wide-eyed children swinging their legs off benches they were too young to understand. They weren't here for prayer. They were here for a spectacle. At the front of the room under the cross that hadn't seen a Sunday sermon in 3 weeks, Judge Morrison stood behind a wide table. Beside him sat a clerk, scribbling on parchment, and to the side Thomas Blackhorse, back, ramrod straight boots, polished voice, ready to slice through the crowd. Isabel sat in the front row, back straight, but fingers clenched in her lap. Sam sat beside her, calm in the way only a man with nothing left to hide could be. Outside, the late sun hung low, throwing long shadows across the floor. Inside, the air felt thick with dust and judgment. The judge cleared his throat. We're here to address the matter of Jacob Blackhorse's marriage to Isabel Ortega. This union has been formally challenged by Mr. Thomas Blackhorse on the grounds of breach of contract and familial interest. The room rustled. Murmurs, eyes darting. Thomas stood. His voice rang out like a preacher at war. My son made a rash decision. He married a woman who wasn't chosen, wasn't agreed upon, and wasn't meant for this family. He did it out of pride, out of stubbornness, and he's risking everything the Black Horse name has built for generations. Gasps. A few nods. He was supposed to marry Clara Miller as agreed. When she fled, he shamed himself and this family by taking a substitute. And now he expects the rest of us to pretend that contract still stands. Someone in the back whispered, "He's right," loud enough for others to hear. Isabel's stomach twisted. Thomas went on. "This marriage is a mistake that must be corrected. We have legal precedents. We have community interest. And we have a better path forward, one that preserves our legacy, our land, and our honor." He gestured toward Margaret Morrison, seated 2 rows back. She smiled, gentle, practiced. She's willing, prepared, and worthy of this name. Sam stood. Every head turned. "I married Isabel in defiance of my father," he began, voice low but clear. "But Isabel didn't manipulate anything. She didn't trap me. She delivered bad news. The choice to marry her was mine." Judge Morrison raised a brow. "A choice made in anger," Sam nodded. "At first." He turned to the room. "But since then, I've watched Isabel turn a cold, empty house into something that feels like home. I've watched her fix what I let fall apart. She's never asked for anything. She's never demanded more. But she's given me more than anyone else ever has." He looked directly at his father. "I didn't marry her because she was left behind. I married her because she stayed." Judge Morrison looked down at his papers. "The contract between you and your father. There is no contract that gives a man the right to erase a wife." Gasps. Thomas's face turned crimson. "You ungrateful little—" "You want me to choose," Sam said. His voice had hardened now. "Then I'll choose poverty. I'll choose exile. But I won't choose the man who treated my wife like a bargaining chip." The room fell silent. Thomas stepped forward, fury on his breath. "You'll lose everything." Sam turned to Isabel. She looked up, eyes glassy but strong. Sam reached for her hand. "I'll have her." Thomas barked a laugh. "You'll have a woman who exists in your life only because her beautiful sister ran away." Isabel didn't flinch. Sam's voice dropped. "Dangerous." Emma wasn't second choice. She was the right choice. I was too blind to see it. Whispers cut through the crowd like wildfire. "Clara was beautiful," Sam said. "But Isabel is real. She's the kind of woman who builds a life, not just sits in it." He faced the judge again. "My father wants me to choose between Isabel and the land, between love and money." He turned back to Isabel. "I choose you." His hand found hers, steady now. "I choose this life. I choose to live it beside someone who knows what it means to fight for it. And I'm done letting a man who's never known love tell me how to keep mine." Isabel's breath caught. Tears rolled silently down her cheeks. Thomas stepped forward again. "You're a fool." Maybe Sam said, "But I'm a fool with a wife I respect. That makes me richer than you ever were." The judge raised both hands. "If both parties consent to the marriage and no evidence of fraud exists, there is no legal basis for annulment." "Mr. Blackhorse," he nodded to Sam, "is 35 years old. He may make his own decisions." A wave of movement in the back of the room. A man in a clean suit stood. "I'm with the First Territorial Bank, Mr. Jacob Blackhorse has been maintaining and paying taxes on the ranch for over a decade. His claim to the land stands regardless of paternal approval." Thomas went rigid. The banker continued. "Furthermore, 5 years ago, Jacob Blackhorse secured a loan against that land. Our bank has first claim in any dispute. He handed the judge a folder. The land is his, free and clear. A murmur spread like thunder. Thomas's jaw dropped. You used the land as collateral. Sam nodded once. To buy more cattle, and I paid it off last year. Thomas stumbled back a step, face pale now. You taught me to build an empire, Sam said quietly. You just forgot to teach me why it matters. He turned to Isabel again. She stood. He took her hand. Stay married to me, he said softly. Not because you're obligated, but because I'm asking you to. Because I want you to. Because I love you. She looked at him like she had never seen him before. And then she said the only word that mattered. Yes. The room erupted. Applause. Shock. Gasps. But all Isabel heard was his breath near her cheek as he kissed her for the first time in front of everyone. She didn't feel like a ghost anymore. She felt seen. Later that night, back at the ranch, Sam stopped her at the bottom of the stairs. Close your eyes, he whispered. What, trust me? She did. He led her up, slow hand in hers. He opened the bedroom door. Now, he said. She opened her eyes and gasped. Fresh flowers in a vase. Candles on the nightstand. A new quilt in soft blues and warm earth tones. Ribbons on the curtains. Everything chosen. Everything meant. Sam stepped behind her. Voice rough. This time, I made the room for you. The candles burned low, flickering shadows across the walls of the bedroom that now finally felt like it belonged to her. Isabel sat at the edge of the bed, her fingers trailing across the new quilt, soft blues and warm browns stitched with care. A detail she'd never mentioned aloud, yet somehow Sam had remembered the colors of the scarf she wore the day they met. He didn't say much after showing her the room. Just stood there watching her reaction, shoulders tense like he didn't know if he'd gotten it right. But he had. When she turned to him with tears in her eyes, he stepped forward, not out of duty or guilt, but something deeper. He kissed her again. Slow, honest, with nothing behind it but truth. That night they lay side by side for the first time, not in silence, not as strangers, but as two people who had fought their way toward each other through dust, fire, and blood. Isabel had never shared a bed before, never known the weight and safety of another person's breath against her shoulder. Sam didn't ask for anything more than what she gave. And when sleep finally came, it felt like peace. But peace, like rain in the desert, never lasts long. The next morning, they rode out to the lower pasture together. The sun had barely cleared the horizon. Dew clung to the edges of the grass, and the horses moved slow as if savoring the quiet before the heat came in. Isabel wore one of Sam's older hats, too big for her head, but shaded her eyes just right. He rode beside her close enough to reach for her hand if he wanted. He didn't. But he looked over at her every few minutes like he couldn't quite believe she was still there. At one point, she caught him smiling. Something on your mind, she asked. He shrugged. Just thinking how different this all looks with you beside me. She blushed, looked away. Different good, different right. They didn't need to say more. The silence between them wasn't heavy anymore. It breathed. They checked fences, watered the troughs, rode back as the sun climbed high. Dust on their boots, sweat at their temples, but neither of them complained. That evening, Isabel made roasted corn and beans with a fresh tortilla stack, and Sam brought in wildflowers he'd picked from the far edge of the property. He set them down without a word, and she placed them in a jar near the window, like it was the most natural thing in the world. After dinner, they walked the edge of the corral in the dark, hands brushing, but not quite holding. And for the first time since their wedding, Isabel let herself imagine forever. The next day, she went into town. Sam stayed behind to finish work on the northern gate, but he sent her with a list: wire nails, more oil for the lanterns. Simple things. Things married people did. She wore her hair up, a pale blue dress, boots clean. People stared, but it wasn't like before. They didn't look at her with pity anymore. They looked at her like she belonged. She passed Reverend Finch outside the general store. He tipped his hat. "Mrs. Blackhorse," he said with a smile. "Looks like the Lord had a better plan than the rest of us." She nodded. Maybe we just needed to stop trying to control it. Inside the store, she traded coin for supplies and chatted with old Mrs. Bowman, who insisted on giving her a fresh pie just because. For once, Isabel didn't feel like she had to earn kindness. She just accepted it. She was tying the last parcel to the wagon when a voice behind her made her heart stop. Funny how quickly dust settles on something you never earned. She turned slowly. Luz stood at the edge of the boardwalk, arms crossed, wearing a dress too fine for Santa Roja, and a smirk too sharp to ignore. Isabel's mouth went dry. "What do you want?" Luz stepped forward. "Just thought I'd take a look at the little empire you're building out of my leftovers." Isabel didn't respond. Luz circled her like a hawk. "You really think he loves you? You think a man like Sam forgets me just because you scrub floors and birth chickens?" "He chose me," Isabel said calmly, "in front of the whole town." Luz leaned in her breath, honey sweet and venom thick. "Enjoy your life, sister. You really should thank me. If I hadn't run away, you'd still be invisible. Still be nothing." Isabel's jaw tightened. "You're wrong." "Am I?" Luz smiled like she'd won something. "Then why do you still flinch every time you hear my name?" She walked away without waiting for a reply. Isabel stood frozen on the street, every word echoing like a slap. Back at the ranch, she unloaded the wagon in silence. Sam was in the barn. She didn't go to him. She made dinner, laid the table, lit the lamp. When Sam walked in, he paused, sensing something. "You okay?" he asked. "Fine," she said. They ate in silence. The light was gone again. Not anger, not distance, just emptiness. Afterward, Sam stood in the kitchen doorway. "What happened?" "Nothing." He stepped closer. "Isabel." "I said nothing." He watched her frustration rising. "You shut down like this and expect me to just guess what went wrong. I saw Luz in town. That stopped him. He waited. She said I'd still be invisible if she hadn't left." Sam's jaw worked. "She doesn't matter. She does. To you." "No." "Yes," Isabel said louder now. "You didn't marry me because you wanted me. You married me because you couldn't walk out of that church humiliated. We've been over this, have we?" Her voice cracked. "Because you've never said you would have chosen me first. Not once." Sam was quiet, and that silence hurt more than any lie could. She turned away. "Don't say anything. I'm tired. I'm just tired." She walked upstairs, leaving him in the dim light of the kitchen. He didn't follow. That night, they slept in the same room, but it felt colder than the night after their wedding. Walls they'd torn down now stood between them, again taller, heavier, and neither of them knew how to start digging through. The sun hadn't yet cleared the rim of the hills when they came. 3 riders again. This time they weren't bothering with subtlety. Isabel watched from the front porch, arms wrapped tight around herself, heart already sinking. The lead rider wore black Judge Morrison. The second was a younger man in a gray suit she didn't recognize. The third, moving just behind them like a vulture watching for something already dead, was Thomas Blackhorse. She didn't call for Sam. She didn't move. He was already on his way, stepping out of the barn, wiping oil from his hands, his shirt half-buttoned. When he saw the men, his jaw tensed. He didn't break stride. Isabel stepped down from the porch. Thomas dismounted first. "No guns today, son. Just words." "You've used words like bullets before," Sam replied. The man in gray cleared his throat. "Mr. Blackhorse. My name is Ellis Rayner. I'm an estate attorney from Albuquerque, appointed by the territorial court to represent your late mother's property trust. I'm here under urgent instruction to inform you of a pending dispute." Sam blinked. "What dispute?" Rayner opened a leather folder and pulled out several papers. "Your mother left her property, her half of this land, in a blind trust with specific conditions for inheritance. That trust has recently come under review due to new testimony and revised filings submitted by Mr. Thomas Blackhorse." Sam stared at him. "What new filings?" Thomas stepped forward, holding up another paper like a man holding a winning card. "Testimony that states your marriage to Isabel was coerced under emotional duress and social pressure. That it wasn't freely entered into and therefore cannot satisfy the moral clause in your mother's trust." Isabel's breath caught. Sam's eyes flicked to her, then back to Thomas. "That's a lie." "Is it?" Thomas asked. "You stood at the altar trying to save face. She was standing there out of shame. The whole town knows it." "I've got affidavits." Judge Morrison nodded. "Enough to trigger a formal review." Rayner added, "If the court agrees the land doesn't transfer solely to you, it reverts to shared control between surviving heirs. That includes your cousin Wesley in Colorado and Mr. Blackhorse here." Sam looked like someone had struck him. "This land is mine. I've worked every inch of it." "Ownership isn't earned by sweat anymore," Thomas said. "It's earned by law." Isabel took a step forward, her voice shaky. "You're doing this because he chose me." Thomas turned slowly. "No, dear. I'm doing this because he betrayed the legacy I built. You were just the door he walked through to do it." Sam stepped between them, his voice low and dangerous. "Get off my land." "This is your mother's land," Judge Morrison corrected. "For now," Thomas added, "but that might change real soon." Rayner handed Sam a court summons. "Hearing is scheduled in 10 days. Santa Roja Courthouse." The three men turned, mounted up, and rode off without waiting for another word. Dust settled. Silence lingered longer. Isabel looked at Sam. "What do we do?" He stared down at the summons in his hand. "We fight." That night they sat at the kitchen table, papers spread between them, oil lamp burning low. "I don't understand," Isabel said. "You told me the loan cleared the deed." "It did, for my share, but Mama's half passed in trust. I never fought it because Thomas never contested it until now. Because of me." Sam met her eyes. "No, because he hates not being in control." She looked away. Sam reached for her hand. "This isn't your fault. I'm the reason this started. You're the reason I even care if it ends." Her throat tightened. He pulled her closer, voice steady. "You've been running from this since the day we met. Wondering if I chose you. Wondering if you were enough." She didn't answer. She didn't have to. Sam cupped her face, gentle. "I chose you then. I chose you at the town hall. I chose you this morning. And if I have to go into that courtroom and fight my own blood to keep what's ours, I'll do it. A beat passed. Then Isabel said quietly, I'll stand beside you, even if it means losing everything. Because if I don't fight for this, I'll never believe it was real. Sam leaned his forehead against hers. That's all I needed to hear. In the days that followed, the ranch moved like a machine under pressure. Sam went through old records, tax forms, and letters from his mother. Isabel combed through the ledgers, piecing together everything they'd built since the wedding expenses. Improvements, crop yields, even letters from the townsfolk about her work. They weren't just preparing a defense. They were building a truth. Maria Tenorio rode in from the arroyo with a bundle of affidavits signed by people from town, Reverend Finch, the school teacher, even grumpy Mr. Weller from the feed store, all vouching for Isabel's role in the ranch, her dedication, her place in the community. You've changed this land, Maria said, and no one with eyes can deny it. Isabel cried when she read them. One night she found Sam asleep at the desk, head on a stack of papers, pen still in hand. She covered him with a blanket, pressed a kiss to his temple. The same man who once couldn't say how he felt, now fought to prove it on paper, word by word. It meant more than any vow ever could. On the morning of the hearing, Isabel wore a plain dark blue dress and braided her hair down her back. Sam wore his best shirt and the boots his mother gave him the year before she died. They rode into Santa Roja in silence. Not fear. Focus. Outside the courthouse, a small crowd had gathered, neighbors, townsfolk, even strangers who had heard the gossip and came for the drama. Isabel ignored them all. She kept her eyes on the door. Sam took her hand. You ready? She nodded. I am. He squeezed once. Then let's go tell them who we really are. The courtroom smelled like old wood ink and dust, the kind of dust that settled in places where truth hadn't been spoken in too long. Isabel sat beside Sam at the plaintiff's table, her hands folded in her lap, heart steady but heavy. Across the aisle, Thomas leaned back in his chair like he'd already won. He wore a charcoal vest, his boots shined, his gray hair slicked back, like he still thought the Black Horse name meant something beyond land and cattle. Judge Morrison sat high above them, spectacles low on his nose, gavel resting like a threat. The room was packed, standing room only, just like the church hall weeks ago. People came to see justice or to see a family tear itself apart in public. The bailiff called the room to order. In the matter of Black Horse versus Black Horse regarding the inheritance rights to the late Eleanor Black Horse's trust and the validity of the marriage between Jacob Black Horse and Isabel Ortega. Isabel kept her eyes forward. She wouldn't give Thomas the satisfaction of meeting his stare. Judge Morrison looked down at the file before him. Mr. Rayner, you may proceed. The young attorney from Albuquerque stood and buttoned his coat. Your Honor, we submit that Mr. Jacob Black Horse's marriage was entered into under questionable emotional circumstances immediately following the unexpected disappearance of his intended bride, Clara Miller. Furthermore, we present testimony that suggests the marriage was motivated by reputation protection, not love or mutual consent. Isabel stiffened. Rayner continued. As such, the marriage fails to meet the moral standard clause required by Eleanor Black Horse's estate, which states the land and trust must pass to a family member living in good character and bonded union. Judge Morrison nodded. And you have witnesses, I do. Rayner called Thomas to the stand. He walked with the slow dignity of a man used to being listened to. Swore-in sat down. What can you tell us about your son's marriage? Rayner asked. Thomas's voice rang clear. Jacob was meant to marry Clara Miller. It was arranged. When she fled, he was humiliated. Instead of canceling the wedding, he walked to the altar and married the sister of the runaway bride, in front of a full church. Not love, not partnership, just pride. And how do you know it wasn't real? Rayner pressed. Thomas glanced at Isabel, then looked back at the judge. Because he never spoke her name before that day. Because he never courted her. And because not a week later they were living on land he doesn't fully own, pretending it didn't matter how it started. Rayner nodded. No further questions. Judge Morrison turned to Sam. Would you like to respond? Sam stood. I do. He walked to the stand and didn't bother hiding the shake in his hand as he swore in. He looked at the judge first, then the people, then Isabel. My father's right about one thing, Sam said. I didn't go to that church that day expecting to marry Isabel. I was angry. I was ashamed. But when I saw her there, standing alone, holding a bouquet someone else picked, I saw more courage in her than I've ever seen in myself. Murmurs echoed through the courtroom. I married her because something in me knew she wouldn't leave. And I stayed married to her because something in me finally understood what love was. Judge Morrison leaned forward. Did you enter this marriage in good faith, Mr. Blackhorse? I did. I just didn't know it yet. The judge nodded. Call your next witness. Sam glanced at Isabel. She stood. Whispers followed her up the aisle. She took the oath, sat down, met no one's eyes but Sam's. Rayner approached slowly. Mrs. Blackhorse. Isabel, she corrected. He smiled fake. Isabel, did you marry Jacob Blackhorse because you were in love with him? She took a deep breath. No. Gasps. A few heads turned. Rayner smiled wider. Thank you. No further questions. Judge Morrison raised an eyebrow. Would you like to clarify your answer, ma'am? She looked at Sam, then at the room. I didn't marry him because I was in love, she said. I married him because someone had to stand in the fire with him, and I wasn't going to let him do it alone. That's not love when it starts. That's respect, and maybe duty. But it's the root of love. She looked down for a moment, then back up. I've fallen in love with him every day since. Because he's not the man who married me. He's the man who became someone who could love me back. Tears shimmered in her eyes. Her voice didn't waver. You want to talk about character? I've watched this man fix fences in storms. I've watched him leave warm dinners to check on sick cattle. I've watched him carry this land like a burden and never once ask why he had to do it alone. He never said he loved me. Not at first. But he proved it in silence, in action, in sacrifice. And when someone does that, they don't need to say it. She turned to the judge. This land didn't make our marriage real. Our marriage made this land ours. The courtroom fell into a hush. Even Thomas looked shaken. Rayner cleared his throat but didn't stand. The judge scribbled something on his notes. Looked to the banker from the First Territorial Bank who stood in the corner. Is the loan Sam Blackhorse referenced last week valid and cleared? It is, the banker said. We've reviewed the documents. The land has been paid in full under Jacob Blackhorse's name. The judge nodded, looked down at the folder again. Then this court finds that the marriage between Jacob Blackhorse and Isabel Ortega stands. It was not entered in fraud. It meets the character clause of Eleanor Blackhorse's trust, and the land remains the sole property of Jacob Blackhorse. He slammed the gavel once. Isabel gasped. Sam exhaled like he'd been holding his breath for 10 days. Thomas stood, his face drained. "You're ruining everything she built." Sam turned to him, voice quiet. "No, I'm just not letting you own it anymore." He offered Isabel his hand. She took it, and together they walked out of that courtroom with nothing to prove to anyone, not anymore. The wind was dry the day they came home. Not the sharp wind of a storm or the lazy breeze of spring, but a quiet kind of wind that drifted across the prairie like it carried stories too old to retell. Sam and Isabel rode side by side through the gate, the horses moving slow, tired not from distance, but from everything that had passed between courtrooms and closed doors. The house looked the same, but it didn't feel the same. It wasn't just theirs now. It was home. Sam dismounted first. He didn't say much, just took the reins, tied them off, started toward the barn. Isabel watched him go. She should have followed. Instead, she stood there in the yard looking at the porch steps like they were asking something of her. She remembered walking up those steps the day after their wedding, holding silence like it was armor. She remembered the first night she slept in the hallway, her back to the door, her heart too full of shame to let anything in. And she remembered how that changed slowly, painfully, but never completely. Now the court had ruled, the town had watched, the land was theirs. But there were no more battles to distract from what still lingered inside her. She climbed the steps and went inside. The house smelled like dried herbs and wood polish. Clean, settled. She set her bag down in the entryway and walked to the kitchen. The morning sun fell across the table, glinting off the vase of dried wildflowers Sam had placed there weeks ago. She touched one with her finger so gently it didn't even tremble. Behind her, the door creaked open. "You hungry?" Em's voice was low. "I'm fine." He stepped inside but didn't come closer. "We should eat. We should talk." He stopped. She turned to face him. "We've been fighting so long, I think we forgot how to be married." He looked away, jaw tightening. She stepped forward. "The land's ours. The name, the title, it's done. But I still go to sleep wondering if you see me when you close your eyes." "I see you," he said quietly. "Do you?" Her voice cracked. "Because you love me like a man defends a house in a fire. Fierce. Desperate. But when the fire's out, you don't know what to do with the quiet." Sam didn't answer. She went on softer now. "You never told me what your mother was like. You never told me how much it hurt when she passed. You never said what it cost you to build this place." He looked at her then, really looked. "I didn't think it mattered," he said. "I thought what mattered was keeping everything standing." "It matters to me, Sam." He sat down slowly at the table, rubbing the back of his neck. "I don't talk easy," he muttered. "You know that." "I don't need easy," she said, joining him. "I need real." They sat in silence a while. The kind that didn't push. The kind that made room. Finally he said, "She died when I was 22. She was sick for a long time, but I didn't believe she'd actually go. When she did, I stayed out here. Didn't go to the funeral in Albuquerque. Just dug fence posts till my hands bled." Isabel said nothing, just reached across the table and rested her fingers on his. "I didn't cry," Sam whispered. "Not once. Thought if I kept it all packed in, it'd mean she wasn't really gone." He blinked fast. "She used to sit on the porch with coffee and just watch the horses. Said they were better company than people. She hated when the wind got in under the door. Always told me to stuff rags by the cracks." He smiled then. Small. Real. "I keep doing it. Every fall." Isabel pressed her hand into his. "She'd have liked you," he said. You're the only one who ever made me feel like a person again. Sam. He stood suddenly, walked to the window. But it scares me. Every damn day. Loving someone like this. Because I don't know how to keep it. And I don't think I know how to fix it if it breaks. She rose too slowly and crossed to him. You don't have to fix me, she said. You just have to stand beside me when I'm broken. She took his hand and placed it over her chest. This right here, it's yours. Not because you earned it, not because you won, because you showed up, day after day. And so did I. He looked at her like he was seeing her for the first time all over again. I never wanted a perfect marriage, Sam. I wanted ours messy, hard, honest. Just ours. He rested his forehead against hers. I can do that, he whispered. Good. They held each other in the quiet. Not because something was ending, but because something was finally beginning. That night, they ate supper on the porch. Sam brought out bread and beans, and Isabel brought a pie someone had left on their doorstep. No note, but she didn't need one. Folks had their ways. They didn't talk much, just watched the horizon fade into dusk. The wind blew soft through the cottonwoods, and for once it didn't feel like something coming to take everything away. It just felt like weather. Later in the bedroom, Isabel opened the small box tucked in the bottom of her drawer. Inside was a single photograph her mother and father taken the year before their deaths. Her mother had the same stubborn mouth. Her father the same tired eyes. Sam watched her from the doorway. She turned. They'd have liked you too, he smiled. I'd have been scared of them. You should have been. She crossed the room and handed him the photo. He held it carefully like it might fall apart in his hands. Then he looked at her. You ever wonder what kind of parents we'd be? He asked. She blinked. Sometimes. He swallowed. I think about it. She searched his face. Are you saying... I don't know if we're ready, he said, but I want to be. Her heart twisted in the best way. I think she said slowly, we're more ready than we've ever been. They didn't speak again that night. They didn't need to. The rains came early that year. It started with a single morning drizzle, barely more than a whisper against the windows. But by week's end, the skies had opened up and poured over Santa Roja like a blessing long withheld. The dirt roads turned slick, the river swelled, and the parched earth drank deep like it had been holding its breath all summer. At the ranch, everything slowed. The cattle sheltered under the cottonwoods. The windmill creaked as it spun. Isabel moved carefully around the house, one hand resting on the gentle swell beneath her apron, the other always near the edge of a chair or countertop. She didn't walk quite as fast as before. She didn't need to. Sam fixed a leak in the barn roof while thunder grumbled somewhere far off. He worked quiet, steady boots, tracking mud flannel rolled to the elbows, hair damp from the mist. Every so often, he'd pause, wipe the rain from his brow, and look out over the land. It didn't seem so heavy now. He came inside near dusk boots, leaving wet prints on the kitchen floor. Isabel was stirring a pot of stew, humming low under her breath. When she turned, he just watched her for a moment, something warm and still moving behind his eyes. Smells like heaven, he said. You say that every time I cook, she teased. I mean it every time. She smiled, and when he stepped forward to kiss her temple, she leaned into it without hesitation. They ate by lantern light. The rain tapped gently at the windows, like an old friend asking to stay a while. Afterward, they sat on the porch beneath a blanket, watching the lightning curl along the horizon. Sam kept one arm around her shoulders, her head tucked against his chest. "You scared?" he asked quietly. Isabel thought for a long moment. Of what? Of what's coming? She looked down at her belly, where life stirred softly beneath her hand. "No," she said. "I think for the first time in my life I'm not scared of anything." Sam tightened his grip around her. "I don't know how to raise a child. Not really. You'll learn." "What if I mess up?" "You will," she said gently. "So will I. But we'll do it together." He nodded. The porch creaked beneath them. Somewhere across the dark fields, a coyote yipped once, then vanished into the hush. "You remember what you told me in court?" Isabel asked. Sam furrowed his brow. "Which part?" She smiled. "That you didn't marry me because you had to. You married me because I stayed." "I remember." She looked up at him, shut eyes soft. "I'm still staying." "I know," he whispered. And that was enough. Weeks passed. The rain gave way to green. The ranch, which had once been brittle and bare, began to bloom. Grass returned in patches. The peach tree near the well bore fruit for the first time in years. Sam replaced the broken swing on the porch, and Isabel planted sunflowers along the front walk. Neighbors stopped by more often now, not to gossip, not to pry, but to lend a hand. Maria brought cloth diapers and 2 loaves of sweetbread. Reverend Finch stopped in with a small wooden cradle built by his own hand. Even grumpy Mr. Weller from the feed store dropped off a bucket of warm milk and muttered something about babies need calcium. One morning while sweeping the porch, Isabel spotted a familiar figure approaching on horseback. Clara. She dismounted slowly, hands shaking, face pale as bone. "I'm not here to cause trouble," she said before Isabel could speak. I needed to see you." Isabel stepped down carefully, broom still in hand. Clara swallowed hard. "You're really pregnant." "I am." Clara's eyes welled. "I didn't know what I was running from back then. I just knew I wasn't strong enough to stay." "But you didn't just stay, Issa. You became." Isabel's throat tightened. "I never hated you for leaving. I hated you for making me believe I'd never be anything more than what you left behind." Clara blinked. "But I was wrong," Isabel said. "You didn't make me believe that." "I did." Clara nodded, eyes dropping. "I forgive you," Isabel said softly. The words landed like rain on parched ground. Clara let out a breath she hadn't known she'd been holding. "Thank you." They didn't hug. They didn't cry. But when Clara rode away, something old and heavy left with her. That night, Sam found Isabel sitting in the rocking chair in the nursery, hands resting on her belly. "She came by," Isabel said. "I saw her ride off," he replied. "You okay?" She nodded. "Lighter." He knelt beside her, resting his head on her leg. They stayed like that for a while, no plans, no words, just the sound of the house holding them safe. The baby came in the early hours of a cold morning in February. Sam was beside her the entire time, white-knuckled, soft-spoken, scared out of his mind, and never letting go. They named her Elena Rose, tiny, dark-haired, loud as thunder. When Sam first held her, his hands shook. Not from weakness, but awe. "She's so small," he whispered. "She won't be for long," Isabel said, her voice raw but steady. They lay her in the cradle the Reverend built and stood over her together. "She's ours," Sam said. "Every piece of her. Just like this land," Isabel added. "Just like this life." He turned to her. "You changed everything," he whispered. No, she replied. We did. Seasons passed. Elena took her first steps on the same porch where Isabel once stood afraid to enter. She fed chickens with her mother. She learned to say horse before she said hello. The ranch never became easy, but it became theirs. In every broken fence, they fixed every letter they wrote. Every silence they learned to fill with love instead of fear. It became the story of two people who chose each other even when the world told them not to, even when it would have been easier to walk away. In the end, love didn't come all at once. It came through choosing, through staying, through weathering storms, not just around them, but inside them, through building a life out of something that was never promised, only earned. And maybe that's what the West was always about. Not heroes with guns or gold in rivers, but quiet hands planting roots in dry earth and waiting long enough to see something grow.